Cars have hit the track. We will recap the Clash and talk about whether that momentum carries into the season or not, maybe what the future of that race is. We'll also go through some of the NASCAR headlines, including the latest manufacturer to put out an electric vehicle and a longtime Penske executive that's taken a different role. All of that here on 5 to Go. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. This is the last episode before we hit episode 300. Yes, number 299 of the 5 to Go podcast here. About to cross those big milestones on GoPRN.com and Apple and Spotify. We're so thankful. Some of y'all been listening from the beginning there, and we'd love for you to flip it over to your friends, make sure they know about it too. I'm Doug Fireball Turnbull from the announcing team at Performance Racing Network, already under 3 weeks away from when PRN first hits the track for all three races at Atlanta Motor Speedway here toward the end of February. And, of course, we got Daytona on the horizon, and we've just come back from the Clash at Bowman-Gray Stadium. We're going to recap that here in just a moment. Joining us on the line to get through the headlines, first off, our roving racing journo, our multimedia enthusiast, one of two people from University of North Georgia. This guy, though, still currently there. That's on this podcast. Devin Kupka, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing good, coming off a busy weekend of work, and glad to see that NASCAR is back. And it's so weird to say it's not the Busch Light Clash; it was the Cookout Clash. But I thought it was a good weekend of racing, and I'm ready to break it down. Amen.
I still think it's weird not to call it the Bud Shootout. All right. The Bud Shootout is what it was for many years. All right. And there was the Clash before that, went back to being the Clash and still is the Clash, but now it's the Cookout Clash. So yeah, toast those hamburgers instead of those tall boys. Right. Also joining us from the Dawsonville Speed Garage, the master maker of speed, grinding those gears and hanging out with his best buddies, all of his favorite tools there in the garage this early morning. Dan Elliott, how you doing?
Doing good, and I think for me, and I speak for myself, it ought to be the Cookout Light Clash.
The Cookout Light
Clash. Because some of us got to watch our schoolgirl figure, okay?
Just a half of a milkshake. All right, going fries instead of rings.
Yeah. Maybe a tablespoonful of the milkshake.
A tablespoon, yeah, really. That's some rich stuff over there. Hey, good that NASCAR keeps the sponsorships going, but it makes you wonder, though. I mean, with Busch just kind of lightly dropping its name off of the Clash there, is that a sign of things to come? I know, Devin, you mentioned last week how Gen Z is a little more in the NA crowd, the non-alcoholic crowd. They're either drinking the NA beers or not touching beer at all. That doesn't mean that Gen Z is more sober than everybody. Y'all are just stoners. That's the difference, okay?
I don't smoke, but
not you.
Definitely, but
I didn't mean
there's
you.
a lot
I'm sorry.
of people that I know that do.
Yeah, they're over there microdosing in the back of chemistry class. It's a whole different deal.
But Doug, these companies are not going to go quietly into the night if they find out Gen Z is not as heavy a drinker. We'll just switch gears and make a little turn and do something different to accommodate Gen Z, whatever that might be.
The Busch Light microdose
could be like a Busch Light energy drink or a Busch Heavy energy drink.
You know what they have on the market now?
No.
THC infused beer, or not beer, but THC infused alcohol.
So what? Okay, yeah, that just seems like that's taking you in two different directions there. Does it actually have alcohol in it, or is it just a? Yeah,
I think so, because it was at Total Wine last time I was there.
THC infused alcohol. Y'all don't drink and drive, okay, or whatever that if you call that drinking. I guess
don't text, drink, and drive,
or smoke either.
Yeah.
Well, right. All of that stuff. Clear head, clear mind, eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel, as Jim Morrison sang. And wasn't he a sober guy? Okay.
Cookout Light.
There you go. Hey, so look, we're not going to do, I heard a lot of the big racing podcasts decided they didn't want to be with you the whole offseason. Now they're back on. I just listened to one, and they didn't mention that Chase Elliott won the Clash until close to an hour in, because they went from talking about non-racing related stuff to talking about the future of the Clash to talking about the race.
That's because he was so far ahead of the field. They didn't know he was in the race.
He was up front the whole time. He didn't run away. Ryan Blaney was right there at the end.
He didn't run away, but he didn't have to run away. And that's the key to this is you only show what you want to show. And I think that was very evident to me. and I do as I always do. I muted the sound and watched the race, and I kind of wanted to focus in on the things that I was more wanting to be attuned to.
I got you. No, well, that is a good way to. Sometimes you could just end up following only what the announcers say, and yeah, I agree. By the way, Fox to me left a lot on the table. I want to get right to that. Fox left a lot on the table because I didn't hear crowd noise. They didn't have didn't have them turned up or just didn't bother to put many Nat sound mics. They talked about this electric atmosphere. Fans on their seat, the edge of their seats, are standing up rather the whole time, but there wasn't any crowd noise.
Maybe it was the electric atmosphere of the electric cars will make no noise. So that's the electric atmosphere.
These were still very, very much fuel related cars. Okay. There was a crowd noise. And then toward the end of the race, I know you said Chase was running away from it, but Ryan Blaney was there and was taking some stabs at it. And they were just talking regular on TV. I didn't listen on MRN toward the end. I listened to part of the LCQ on MRN. That was edge of your seat. No matter what, up front, Ryan, whoever, Ty Gibbs, Eric Jones, blah, blah. I mean, you know how the radio broadcasts are. Gosh, do I, right? And TV, I was so not surprised, just disappointed that it was just like, oh, there's Chase. Oh, Ryan's coming. Oh, and I'm like, come on, I mean, and that doesn't mean Mike Joy is one of my favorite announcers, and I think Kevin Harvick does a great job in the booth. Clint Boyer is exciting, but man, when something is in conflict, build the drama, because this you take people with you on that kind of thing.
Yeah,
unless Dan has the sound muted. So
where's Barney Hall when you need him?
Yeah. Well, that's true. Barney Hall did a great job of not overselling it, but always keeping it right there. Ken Squire was my favorite. He always pointed out where the drama was. But nonetheless, Chase Elliott, if you look at the stat line, didn't seem like a lot of drama there on Sunday night. But that doesn't mean that the racing was poor. The field stayed together. There were passes. We saw Ryan Blaney, who finished second, go from 23rd. He took the provisional spot on points, being second in points, and went 23rd to second in the big show. He finished second there, and Kevin Harvick went on and on about how Ryan Blaney's so good about extracting speed out of that car, and really broke down on TV, one of my favorite parts of the broadcast, how well he centers the corner, how well he can just make that car rotate in comparison to others. I'll buzz through the top 10 here. Denny Hamlin, the winner of the Clash a year ago when it was in LA, he finished third. Joey Logano, winner of this race 3 years ago when it debuted at the Coliseum. He didn't win in a new track. He didn't win at a new track. I guess it is an odd number of years. Joey Logano finished fourth. Bubba Wallace had a solid run the whole night, was right around the fifth position most of the time in the Lighthouse Toyota. He was fifth. Ross Chastain, kind of quiet, but raced his way in. He was sixth. Austin Cindric was seventh. Eighth went to Tyler Reddick. Ninth to Shane Van Gisbergen, who looked great. It looked like he definitely had been on ovals longer than he had. And maybe if we pick besides road courses, I think heavy braking tracks like a Martinsville or other short tracks, it might be his cup of tea. He was ninth, and Chris Buescher was 10th. By the way, the RFK cars were notorious for missing the main event at the Coliseum all 3 years. And all three of them made the big show here on this iteration. So the only other leaders beside Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin led twice for 28 laps, including leading at the halfway break. He passed Chase there toward the end of that first segment. And Tyler Reddick, who started up near the front, he led one time for one lap, kind of faded toward the end of that race. What were some takeaways? I'll come to you first, Dan. Takeaways just from this event in general, it being at Bowman-Gray Stadium, NASCAR's first time racing there since 1971, a stadium that has football and then has a quarter-mile racetrack around it, much like the LA Coliseum, but this time it wasn't built in. It was already there. They're known for having the modifieds there, the 17,000 or so sold-out crowd. What'd you think, Dano?
I thought it was, all in all, I thought it was pretty good as far as the race itself. I think that definitely there were teams that were out to lunch for sure. There were teams that were out to lunch when they got there, got a little bit better. There were teams that were kind of mediocre, that stayed mediocre. And then you had, it seems like Chase and their crew, everybody else was racing for second. And it was like Chase's car was almost as if it was like all-wheel drive coming off the corner. It
That's a good
it
way to put it.
it dug in and bit in coming off because no one from center off could keep up. But he did everything in his power to avoid the outer lane. It obviously didn't work on the outside because Hamlin was the only exception to the rule because Hamlin kept faking him off to the outside like he was going to make an outside move and then dipped down and got under him. And that was the reason he got by him. And I knew that before the halftime, they would regroup and Chase wouldn't let that happen again. And he didn't. It was basically, to me, his and his teams to lose. It was just that way evident all weekend long. And there are times like this that things happen that way to where it's yours to lose. And he did a spectacular job of maintaining that position and keeping his cool and running a great race.
He certainly did. It was his most complete race in a long time. You know, we've seen Chase.
Other than Hamlin getting by him, that was the only one. And I think that was just one. It was not a mistake. It was one of those little bit of learning lesson right there on how he needed to race him for the second half.
I think that Chase Elliott and Alan Gustafson have the longest driver crew chief pairing now in the Cup Series. This is Chase's the start of, can you believe this, guys? The start of his 10th Cup season.
I figured if they were 6 races together, that seems to be about how long a crew chief and a driver stay together now.
It's a lot more fleeting, but there's some other pairs that have been together for a while, you know, Joey Logano, Paul Wolfe, but that's only been about 5 years. Chase and Alan Gustafson, Alan Gustafson was Jeff Gordon's crew chief. Chase took over the 24 car for the 2016 season, so they're starting year 10 together. That's really pretty incredible, and they obviously know how to speak to each other and press the right buttons and make it go. It was interesting, to your point, Dan, how much Chase was ahead of his teammates, while Larson had a great car in the LCQ. It drove from about 10th or so up to first. He was in the back of the pack, got spun a couple times and just never could overcome it. And he and William Byron and Alex Bowman all ended up not even on the lead lap at the end of this race. The final 80 laps ran green, by the way. So there were a good number of cautions right at the beginning of the second segment and a couple in that first 100 lap segment, but the last 80 ran green. Really what was spicy were the heat races and especially that LCQ race. Now, Dev, what about you? So Chase wins. We talked about Blaney's big comeback there. Some takeaways from you and this opening event and first time for a long time for the Cup Series at Bowman-Gray.
Well, before I go to my overall takeaways, I want to say this about Chase Elliott. I was thinking about this on Sunday night after the race, and if you're a Chase Elliott fan, you got to be feeling pretty good about this because I'm comparing this win similar to what Joey Logano did in the All-Star race at Wilkesboro last year. Remember last year it wasn't good leading up to that point last year in the season for Logano. And look, he went out and dominated the All-Star race, led all but one lap. Now Elliott dominated a 200-lap shootout.
171 laps led, yep.
171 laps led, similar to Logano, maybe just not as much, but it kind of just had the same feeling to that. It was like, okay, well, maybe Elliott's going to be a driver to watch out for this season. Maybe they've got it together now. I know it's the first race of the season. It's the Clash, but I don't know. Those are the vibes I was getting from that win. I was like, okay, because it's just hard to do. It's hard to lead all but 29 laps or something like that. Right. It's hard to do that. So I don't know. Elliott might be a driver you want to keep your eye on this season. Maybe he'll rip off multiple wins for the first time in 3 years now.
Yeah, for sure. I guess, what was it, 2022 was the last time he had multiple wins? I think so. I think so, yeah. He only had 1 in 21. He had 5 in his championship season in 2020. Then he went winless in 23 and had the single win at Texas last year. That's a good point. Yeah, it had those vibes for sure. And look, Dan, I really think of this as kind of a unicorn event. You never know what's going to uncork from this, but you seem to think, Dan, too, that this is a big statement win or a big momentum shot as well.
Yeah, because it was the style in which it was done in when you spanked the field, because like I said, you basically eliminated everybody else, because yes, Hamlin had their moments, Blaney had their moments. You had really basically for the long haul no other driver that could touch him, and when they did get to him, they done use their stuff up. And he's sitting there, and you have no idea what he had left because nobody pushed the envelope.
You
And
know,
I just think it's going to be a very interesting team meeting at Hendrick, whether it was yesterday, today, or this week, on the other crew chiefs wanting to open up a can of whoop ice because information wasn't shared. And I think that's the deal. I think there were things that went into that weekend, into that car, and I ain't taking nothing away from the driver. It's just that I think there were things pretty evident to me that there were things that weren't shared.
Yeah, go ahead, Devin.
you know who had a dominant performance in the Busch Light Clash?
Cookout class.
In 1987, Bill Elliott did. Led 13. Was that a rain shortened race or something? Because he led over half the laps.
Well, those were short races back then. You
They're
said
only 20 laps.
What, were they that short back then, Dan? I know those races were incredibly short.
They were, when you're on pit road watching all that unfold, it lasted for hours. And you had no fingernails left when you got done.
Time of race, 15 minutes, 1987 Busch Clash.
Yeah, those races were just they were just part of the ticket back then. The first Clash was 1979, and those were, I mean, the Clash was made to be, there's no coincidence. I heard Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi talk about this on the Teardown. No coincidence that the Clash debuted in 1979, the same year that NASCAR decided to do that flag-to-flag race for the Daytona 500 on CBS. No coincidence. It was an exhibition to give people just a taste of what they were going to see a week later. And that was the beginning of speed weeks, right? That's where you've already had a Daytona 500 practice, and you've already had all, the ARCA race. And okay, well, I don't know if then it was the ARCA race or not, but that it all fit in a really good order. You had Cup qualifying, the way it worked through the 2000s, you had Cup qualifying on Sunday, and the Clash, or what was then the Bud Shootout, was the night before, and the ARCA race was the day of the Bud Shootout, and then it sets up the whole week, and then you have the Daytona 500 a week later. Of course, we're not in that signature anymore. Everything's compressed into about 4 days, basically.
You had something going on the track. You had something going on all the time.
Yeah,
it was unreal. As to there was never a dull moment. Everything was just, and that's kind of what I was saying on the last episode about events in other places. You can blend this, you can bring this together and make it in a format much as if it was all at the same racetrack, but you're bringing these segments together to where that you're always tuning into a race or something interesting somewhere. You're not losing focus.
Yeah, that's a good point. Hey, one thing to clarify in case anybody wonders. So, roughly, week and a half from when we record this, or a week and 2 days, we'll have the dual races. Those will actually award the first points of the year. All right, the duels will, because the top 10 finishers in each dual race, the qualifying races before the Daytona 500, you get stage points. So there's still no points awarded. This is completely an exhibition race. And then that opens up the question. This race, more than any others, is a place on the NASCAR schedule that is being used for experimentation. It goes from so we go from the Daytona Big Track as recently as 2020 to the Daytona Road Course in 2021 to the LA Coliseum for 3 years. Now we've done the Bowman-Gray Stadium deal, and even before the checkered flag flew, it felt like Sunday. It felt like this race is going to be, banned on the run. It's going to be something that's used as an experimentation point over and over. There were reports from Adam Stern, Sports Business Journal, that NASCAR is looking at Brazil as a place for this race. Of course, it could be picked up and done in other cities. And it, to me, creates this tension because for years it was run at Daytona. One of the reasons brought away from Daytona was, oh my gosh, we're tearing up race cars by making this exhibition race, and then they're wrecking $150,000 cars to win pennies on the dollar compared to a cup race. But you had a tradition. You had something to look forward to every year. now you have a chance to build a tradition at Bowman-Gray Stadium at a place that's very traditional. But it still leaves if you do that, if you lock it in, then there's one less place to experiment. So Devin, I want Gen Z perspective, my man. What do you think should be done, or what do you see being done with the Clash as we go to 26 and beyond?
Well, what I've heard is that they want to take this internationally, which I think would be a good move to do. Test the waters. Brazil, they have a NASCAR Brazil series. How about this? Has anybody thought about the connection of all these new international NASCAR series? Like, you have the Mexico series, you have the Brazil series, you have something out there in Europe. I feel
Euro
like that's
series,
just setting up
Canada series.
That's setting up the Cup Series to have a race in those countries, and then those be the supporting races. So you don't have to bring in Xfinity and truck to come in. So,
do you think N1 is alive and well, Doug?
Hey, I have no problem testing the international waters. No problem testing the international
but we've
waters.
said that for how long? 5 or 6 years now?
Episode 300 will be next week, and I think you've been saying the phrase N1 since the very beginning in 2017.
It's coming. It's coming. Buckle your seats. But Devin, do you need to elaborate any more on?
I was just saying, like, the connection with the other series, the international series, and then having races in those countries, which I think I've heard the Busch Light, or keep calling it Busch Light, just the Clash next year is going to be in Brazil next year. But for Bowman-Gray, this should be the all-star race by far, I think.
I go back to what I said in the beginning. I think that the Clash as well as the championship race should move, because you're getting complacent, and it's going to be the same thing as Phoenix over and over and over and over again, and you're going to get tired of that. I'm sorry, you're going to get tired.
Well, I don't love the idea of as soon as something happens, we're already looking at the next thing. But when you have these experimental races, and put Chicago on that list too, we're entering year 3 at Chicago. It does open up that box of these are the kind of races where we don't have a big tradition. It makes them more malleable and able to move. Where can we take that show on the road next? So, whether it's Brazil, I don't love the idea of the whole sport going to Brazil 2 weeks before the Daytona 500. I would think maybe it's something that needs to go in the dead center of the off season, like right after the first of the year or something like that. You just have this one-off thing, and then, okay, go back home and go back to work, go back to preparing for the season. I don't know that I love the logistics, and you really can't put it too easily in the very middle of the season when you're racing week to week. So I feel like an off-season race, like they did in Australia many moons ago and in Japan in the late 90s, maybe an off-season event overseas would be a good start.
So how would you feel about a Black Friday race? Maybe move the Clash there
to go against the NFL.
Oh yeah, shoot! They have their game on there.
I don't know. I don't know that I don't know that I love them. They miss so many holidays during the year. That means they'd have to be there on Thanksgiving, right?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I don't know that I love that.
If you have it like maybe Bowman-Gray again or something, it's right there where a lot of the teams are.
Yeah, I mean, you could tech them a few days before. Hey, another thing that came out of this, we mentioned it last week, the cars were teched off-site. Like the optical scanning station was done at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
I think the 9 car skipped tech.
Keep in mind, folks, that's his uncle saying that. Okay, so no, objective. Respond right here.
More power to you.
Respond right here. Did Chase Elliott skip tech? No, but
he didn't skip tech.
So the tech was handled off-site. It was handled at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and Jeff Gluck did a great piece in The Athletic, and he did, and I hope he actually continues doing this for every race, all right, or the ones he goes to, garage talk after the race. And he went around with a few topics and just got people to talk, some of them off the record, but just got people to describe different things. And one of them, it seemed to me walking away from it, and this was not on my radar at all, could NASCAR start teching these cars in Charlotte before they go on the road to some of these other tracks to keep the crews from having to come in a whole extra day early, and maybe from having to travel so many people? If you get your car teched, the big stuff, the scanning stuff, at the R&D center or in Charlotte Motor Speedway, you get the stickers put on it, then you load it up and take it to the track. Now, I know where the problems could be, and these were mentioned in the article is what could teams do in between A and B, so to speak. But it seems like an interesting concept than having to be lined up at the racetrack. I saw Devin shaking his head. I should go to the mechanic first, but Devin, you were shaking your head more than Dan was. So do you?
I feel like there's so much stuff that could go wrong when you do that. There's just things because you could probably maybe even retape it, reseal it in the hauler. Like Dan, have you ever worked on a car inside the hauler before?
Excuse me. I've heard the stories. Yes. Yes.
It's definitely happened.
I've heard of the crew working on the car where they loaded the car. They used to be able to load the cars into the hauler overnight to keep them out of the weather. The crew,
Yeah.
several people in the crew were in the hauler working on the car through the night.
Now, and imagine how hard it would be to do that.
Be easy to do that.
Well, but up in that cramped space, you can't even stand up on the top, like because you loaded in the top, right?
Doug, the early shops weren't much better than that truck was.
Well, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I want to be clear. When this was talked about in the article, it was that was accounted for. Like it was like people were like, okay, they would have to figure out some other safeguards from that. But could you potentially save road costs for the teams by not having to come in a whole extra day early and do the tech? I don't know. Just an idea. But of course, if you're allowed to practice at the racetrack and work on the race car and have qualifying and such, something would change in between all of that. And what could you change on the race car right in plain daylight that you shouldn't be allowed to change? That could, change from the optical scanning station or not. I don't know. But keep in mind too, that some races where they don't impound the cars, they put them through that OSS on race morning and through the different. So there's a lot to consider there, but maybe for some of the shorter shows or for the nearby races, or if you have a situation like Chicago or Bowman-Gray where you're limited on space, could you somehow have a procedure to
Doug, as good as technology is and the way AI and everything is, you cannot and will not be able to 100% say every time that a car is not done something that somebody else hasn't been able to do. It's technology. It's like I went to, this has been 15 years ago. I went to one of the trade shows. The crate motor had just started running short tracks, and they were talking about traction control. And this was one of the engineers from Chevrolet that was there.
Yeah.
And he said if traction control was somewhere in the engine or on the engine, he said, take my word for it, you're not going to find it.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, this is a Chevrolet engineer telling you that because your people that work at the racetrack, they're good, but they're not the ones that's inventing and coming up and this stuff is only as good as the technology of the next day or the next moment, as you've seen in the news on everything else. Technology is changing at such a rapid pace that there is no way on God's green earth to keep up, and things are going to slip through the cracks. And all you're trying to do is eliminate the big stuff from getting through, but you know that there's stuff going to get through.
That's true. If you skimp on inspection when these cars are already so close, if someone gains a small advantage, then it's actually a larger advantage.
A small advantage when all the cars are alike is huge. This much difference is a huge difference.
No, I completely agree. Devin, were you about to say something? Or okay. Wait, before we leave the Clash, one other thing. It seemed to me that really most of the big names from the biggest teams made the big show. Now, granted, the way the Cup Series is with parity, we've got 36 charters. Almost really all but 3 or 4 of these are considered a disappointment if they don't contend for the playoffs or get close to making the cut, whatever the cut is or something. So I'm trying to hedge this a little bit, but were there any disappointments about who didn't make the big race, or maybe unexpected names of you guys that didn't make it, that had a tough showing?
I think some of the people that were raced a lot at Bowman-Gray,
Burt Myers and Tim Brown.
Burt Myers, yeah. Seeing them not being able to make it, but it was going to be tough with the top 2. I thought was really intriguing in the LCQ was Larson for a little bit there. He was
Uh-huh.
like way in the back, and I was like, oh man, he might miss the main
I
event.
didn't think Larson was going to make it. I thought it was going to be too hard to go from 10th to even 75 laps to go 10th to first, and especially the way he races. I mean, he races with his elbows out a little bit, but he's not quite as pointed, let's say, as some other drivers are when it comes to aggression and so forth. But and the fact there's an exhibition, I thought, is he really going to?
Doug, when you have top contenders that struggle, what does that say for the rest of the people that don't run these cars 100% of the time or don't have the funding or the
Right.
backing to be able to do this on a regular basis? Even though you do have a lot of experience at that racetrack, you do not have a lot of seat time, whether it be simulator or whether it be car
I
time.
agree. I thought that Burt Myers and Tim Brown were going to be hard pressed to race into this show. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that maybe because you only had to be top 5 in your heat race, there was a chance, with some attrition, but Rick Ware Racing, not the top of the pack, and certainly with Burt Myers' case, Team Amerivet Racing, the number 50. These are
I
the
think I
bottom.
think this is a good example of where we're going in the future based on current trend as to who will race and who won't,
Right.
and
Well,
how easy it will be to get yourself into this deal if you don't start running if you're not on a simulator or in a car or both or whatever from birth, you're not going to be in a car unless you might be Elon Musk's son and you've got the money to be able to do this and you're launching rockets into space. That might be the deal. But for the rest of us who, as we started, remember, we came out of a junkyard, okay, and you are hard pressed to get to the racetrack now, let alone compete running out of a junkyard.
yeah, well, that's true. That's true. So there were 36 chartered cars and then 3 open cars that came. None of the open cars raced their way in. The 50 of Burt Myers, the 15 of Tim Brown, the 66 of Garrett Smithley, the new named Garage 66 team. Um, the teams that missed it, Austin Dillon, teams and drivers, Austin Dillon, John Hunter Nemechek, Michael McDowell in his new start with Spire Motorsports, also Spire's Justin Haley with Rodney Childers as crew chief. They missed the show. Zane Smith was the only front row car that didn't make it. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. didn't make the race, but he did manage to wreck Burt Myers in front of his home crowd there. And they should have had the crowd noise up. Okay, they should have shown the birds flying. Just saying. Both Tim Brown and Cody Ware out of the Rick Ware stable didn't make it. Both AJ Allmendinger and Ty Dillon didn't make it there for their Colleague Racing team. Cole Custer for the new Haas Factory team. There was one point he was in contention there. He got shuffled back. Eric Jones was in the top 2, and he got spun out of the lead. I can't remember who ran into him. But Jones had a good run going. Riley Herbst also was going well, and then he got wrecked early in the LCQ and just couldn't make up for that. He got spun out in the middle of the pack. But I left off one name who got spun several times in the LCQ race, and even at one point upon taking out his aggression, accidentally got airborne in the LCQ race when he was taking a swipe at Justin Haley's car after the second of those spins. And that was one Tyrone. I'm pretty sure Ty is short for Tyrone. Tyrone Gibbs. How about Ty Gibbs not racing his way in on day 1 and then badly missing the cut on day 2 and seeming to have it under his skin there? New crew chief Tyler Allen moves up after winning a ton of races in Xfinity last year. His crew chief Chris Gale moved to Hamlin's car. Ty Gibbs didn't have it and was the only Gibbs car to miss the big show there, Dan. I've got to feel like, and I know I'm not saying pressure in terms of his job, but pressure to win. Winless in his first 2 Cup seasons. It seems like season 3 is the magic year, Dan, for drivers to get that first win these days in a lot of cases. Ty Gibbs, I know it's just an exhibition race, but to me, I saw something there that did not spell good for 2025.
This is what I tune in for is to see things like this and to see who. But Doug, you had to for the cars that were toward the back that struggled anyway. This was do or die anyway. This one of those situations that you're put into, and how you react to that. We saw Larson spin, we saw Kyle Busch spin, we saw Ty Gibbs, we saw countless other drivers, the 24 car, and some of that because We didn't get the right camera angle, so forth. We don't
Yeah.
know who started it. We know who ended it, but we don't know how it started or where it started. But this is kind of what you tune in for an exhibition race. But yeah, you're going to struggle, and yeah, that does not bode well on how your season. Chase on top of the mountain and Ty Gibbs in the deepest valley, and you think don't count them out though because it's just one exhibition race. So
Hey, to give the flip side of that, yeah, I think about like Kurt Busch badly missing the show at the 2022 Clash. Oh no, Kurt's on a brand new team and he didn't make the big show. And then Kurt goes out and he wins for 23-11 and actually runs well until getting in that crash and getting the concussion late in that season or in the middle of that season. Um, it could go either way, right? I don't like to read too much into it, especially when it comes to doom and gloom. Ty Gibbs running for a great team. He's showing more maturity, but it seemed like so some of his bad side certainly came out, Devin, there on Sunday night, especially. But what'd you think about that? Was Ty Gibbs your biggest surprise or disappointment out of the whole event, Dev, or did you see anything else out of the list I read that you thought should have popped in?
I thought I want to get y'all's thoughts on the racing you saw in the LCQ. Is that I know Bowman-Gray's the madhouse and all that,
Yeah.
but like yes, I saw the car get airborne. That was quite funny.
And I don't think that was intentionally. He was just trying to swipe at him, and the tires connected, and it launched him a little bit. Yeah.
But I don't think this is racing we've seen at the premier level in NASCAR. Like how, especially in the LCQ, how aggressive the racing was. That was really crazy to see. But I wonder if this teeters on the line. Is this acceptable? Is this too aggressive? Are they making too much contact?
You're not going to hear that from me. Now, I mean, it's tough when they don't count the caution laps. All right. And you're just like, oh, gosh, another yellow. These were quick yellows because there's not really a pit road. They could pull off the track. I did like, though, without the yellows counting, you could pull off the track. Ty Gibbs didn't lose a lap because of hitting Justin Haley getting airborne. He pulled into the pits. They pulled on the sheet metal or the composite body and then sent him back out. So, I mean, I like that it kept more people on the lead lap. But, yeah, it's tough when the caution laps don't count. And really, and you even saw it in the main show, when they don't once they get a rhythm going and they can kind of get in line, you don't have a bunch of cars stuck on the outside, you're not going to see that. But with the LCQ, Denny Hamlin predicted, I heard his MRN interview, the heat races where the position where it's go or go home. The LCQ, second and first is the only one that transfer. And you knew going into the LCQ that Ryan Blaney was pretty much not going to run it because he was guaranteed to go to the next race. They replaced the radiator or whatever it was. He ran a few laps. He said, okay, I'm good. The go or go home is where you're going to see the scramble. In the main race, you have 200 laps to figure it out. And as Denny Hamlin put it in his podcast, Actions Detrimental, after the race, we're not going to wreck each other for 8th place on purpose. Like, you're not just going to lose your mind for 8th place with 50 laps to go in the big race. If you don't think you could get to the front, only first matters. Even first barely matters because people don't usually remember who wins these races. So I don't know, Devin. I mean, I think people want to see the aggression, long as it's not just unconscious, like which some of them get. Hey, what do we think about the short track package here? Because this tire had fall off. Okay, forget if they were wrecking each other, how close to each other or not. This tire fell off almost in 1 second over that 100 lap first run. And it was the same soft tire that they used in Martinsville. I think it's going to be the same soft tire as the option tire they use at Phoenix in the spring when they run the two different compounds. Devin, what'd you think? Do we have some more answers on the short track package finally now?
I need to see a bigger sample size. That's what I mean, because Bowman-Gray, I think, is a unique situation. Bowman-Gray for a short track brings the most. It was so unique. The racing was just so unique, where the banging was actually acceptable. Yeah. Banging into another driver multiple times a lap, like it was accepted. Like, okay, the aggressiveness. So I don't know. I feel like Bowman-Gray is a little unique.
Yeah, there's no doubt it's unique, but it has some characteristics of Martinsville and so forth. The cars were not stuck in a line, on a one groove racetrack, and some like Denny Hamlin's and Noah Gregson was another, were able to make it work a little bit on the outside too. I mean, if anything, they could at least hold their ground. What about you, Dan?
I think you need to look at two aspects of this instead of one. I think you need to look at not only the short track package, which to me was pretty much irrelevant anyway at that particular point in time because the racetrack is so different anyway. I think you need to look at your procedure on how the short track races need to be run during the course of the year because I really did like the fact that that race could have been settled in 10 laps. It didn't take 200 laps. It could have been settled in 10 laps. Okay, so let's give the teams a little bit more leeway. Let's shorten up the short tracks and maybe even if you don't, but let's put an intermission in them where you can do some changes to the car to make a difference because otherwise you're stuck in the same place that you're at with no chance of doing anything.
So wait, you want a short track like at Bristol, let's say, or Martinsville, Richmond, a short track red flag, not not a
We're in the
stage
middle of
break.
changing so much stuff that we don't know what we want, but let's try one. Let's try one and see where we're at. Where you have a intermission. Let's say that you run because, like I say, you could settle that in less laps. Okay, so let's throw in some more races. Okay, let's throw in maybe some heat races. Let's throw in some, as you said, maybe an exhibition race in before all of that starts, or you could run halfway and have another series run a short race in the intermission while they're working on the cars. You could throw in so many things, and I'm throwing it out here because I want to see things going on, and I want the cameras instead of all the cameras focusing on on the on the drivers that we I've seen that, I've heard that, and let's go to the pits and look at some of the stuff that's getting done or talk to some of the drivers on what they want to see different or the changes they want made. Let's get a little bit out of the box here.
Interesting. Okay, running a whole darn race in between a red flag to make changes at say a Bristol or something like that.
Okay,
I mean,
look at what we did at Gresham as far as the races. You could run a 20 lap race or a 10-minute race,
yeah,
whatever time or lap,
yeah.
and have things going on for the fans to see to keep them engaged.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a great idea because, like I said, that race at Bowman-Gray could have been settled in 10 laps.
I do think the length of the feature probably could have been 150 instead of 200 or something like that. You know, not just because Chase was dialed in and running away, but it seemed like the urgency really only the top. Yeah, and let's put it this way: in the heat races, the top 5 transfer, and those were 25 lap events. The LCQ was 75 laps, top 2 transfer. The 200 lap race, well, guess what? The top 1 transfers.
Yeah.
There was nothing much outside of first, no matter who was first, you know, not picking on first.
No.
So good thoughts there, boys. We need to see more of the short
We
track.
could have some spectator races in the middle of those races, and that would be exciting to me to have the spectator races.
I didn't see this guy on TV, but apparently there was a dude that was shirtless the whole time there at Bowman-Gray, painted in red and black for Christopher Bell, number 20. And the fans are so, for those who couldn't tell on TV or haven't been to Bowman-Gray, the fans are right on top of the racetrack there. There isn't a big gap in between the seats and the race surface, so the drivers could see the fans. You know, Kyle Larson talked about vividly, oh, yeah, I saw a dude flip me off every single lap. All right. Christopher Bell saw the gentleman in the number 20 with the shirt off and all that stuff. So, yeah, I would like to see some of these, the birds and the skins, we'll call them.
I would like to see Kyle Busch's
race
deposition of what he saw from the grandstands.
Okay. What is there something that happened that made?
Well, just think about the fan base.
Well, the fan base likes Kyle Busch now.
Now more of them do, but there's still people. If you go sit in the grandstands at a race nowadays, there's still people that don't like him.
Well, that's definitely can't deny that. Hey, speaking of, we're going to move away from Bowman-Gray here. Just a couple other headlines. We saw the merch sales come in for 2024. I don't have the full list, but some notables on that list. Chase Elliott, no surprise. He started off before Bowman-Gray. He had a dub last week. All right. Chase Elliott sold the most merch. He sold more more merch than even as NASCAR has branded merch. They were number 2. Some other ones that popped up here. I mean, I wish I had the whole list, but Ross Chastain was 4th. I think being paired with Busch Light helps. That's for sure. But also, he's a popular driver. A lot of people root for that one car. Joey Logano was 7th, in which he gets a lot of boos. So, okay, he was 7th. Dale Sr. is still 9th. I love that. That black number 3 is just sharp looking. Dale Jr. is 11th. 14th, Tyler Reddick. 15th, Bubba Wallace. And as popular as Bubba is, maybe just as people outside of NASCAR because of the news he made several years ago and whatnot, yeah, within the sport, gets a lot of boos. I don't see a ton of people decked out in Bubba gear, so I'm not super surprised about that. Anything that stands out to you, Devin, on the list there? I know you're out a man amongst the fans quite a bit.
Not really. I mean, it's kind of the typical stuff you see at the racetrack, really. Where's the Cole Custer fans at? I remember a couple of years ago, it'd be like, oh, hey, there's a Cole Custer fan in the grandstand. Where are they at?
Yeah,
we're talking years ago, but
yeah, one. His mama.
That was me, I guess.
It was you. Okay, yeah. I don't see those popping up too much. I wonder how Justin Allgaier's merch sales are going to be now that he's going to be attempted the Daytona 500, especially if he makes the show. Number 40, Travelers Whiskey, Chris Stapleton, Dale Jr., the whole association. He is normally the most popular Xfinity Series driver. I wonder if that number 40 makes the race, does the diecast make the top 10? Does Justin Allgaier, even on the Cup drivers list, make the top 10? I don't know. Let's keep going. So Team Penske, go ahead, Devin. I'm sorry.
Well, there's some breaking news in here that I wanted to. We had a great discussion about the Clash, but let me share my screen here. But Xfinity Series, let me get my screen up.
Never heard of that.
Never heard of that.
Never heard of the Xfinity. Is that
so?
Are we allowed to talk about them?
From Adam Stern, the Xfinity will end its title sponsor of the NASCAR Xfinity Series at the end of the season.
8:06 a.m., February 4th. Okay.
Yep. And they are going to extend their partnership, though, with NASCAR. So in the Cup Series, you'll still see them and all that.
They're still a premier sponsor. And NASCAR lost a premier sponsor from year to year. Geico is no longer one of the premier companies, along with Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola remains, Busch remains, Xfinity remains, but not Geico. So
Xfinity to end its partnership after.
It said it's ending its premier sponsorship or extending?
No, it's ending. So the NASCAR Xfinity Series won't be the Xfinity Series anymore after the end of the season.
I misheard you. The whole time I thought you said it was extending. It said ending. I'm sorry.
No,
okay,
well,
wow.
I think it says in the thing. I'll reshare my screen here.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, and we're testing this out on video here. So look, I got all flummoxed with the bright lights. Concluding. Okay, I saw. I don't know. I don't know where my head was at there. Okay, concluding. Yeah, my bad. But it's going to renew its premier partnership, so it's still going to stay in the sport. Not surprised given the state of cable television these days.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wonder is the Busch Series going to come back?
That's true. Busch is another premier partner. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Boy, that would be popular, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That would be popular to have the Busch Series again. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about that, Dan?
I think let's infuse some new blood into this and go after something different. Let's
the
get
THC infused Xfinity.
Let's get into the Gen Z and let's get an infusion of some new blood.
The TikTok series.
Oh God.
No, I think that NASCAR, if NASCAR was smart, they would probably get Taylor Swift to sponsor the series, and it could be the NASCAR Swifty series or the NASCAR Swift series.
I knew Dan was trouble when he walked in. Okay, so that's
no. I mean, it's just something different. I'm not promoting.
What if like a mogul, an artist who's a mogul as well, Rihanna's a billionaire or something, right? Like, or Taylor Swift or whoever. What if somebody just said, I'm going to sponsor NASCAR's second tier series and just threw that number on? It's doable. I mean, for that series, Monster, the 2 or 3 years that Monster did the Cup Series, they're only paying like $20 million a year. which is a big number, but it's, to be the sponsor of the whole dang series, that's not a huge number. So you got to think Xfinity's even less. I mean, we could have the Swifty series for 10 mil a year.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. Okay.
We could have
I said I was out at first, but they could keep the purple color and everything. They could, it would be right there.
They can do whatever they want to do. They're buying the deal, so it's up in the air. But I just think that let's infuse some new blood and let's get something different here. Let's spice it up. Let's make some changes. If that's exactly what it looks like, the right turn that we've made, then let's just take the right turn and go.
So I want to point out too, Xfinity did a whale of a job activating, embracing NASCAR. They are the kind of partner, whatever NASCAR looks for, I hope they find. It'll be tough to find, but I hope they do what they found in Xfinity. A company that truly they cared about it, that the Dash for Cash program, we'll talk about that in a minute, by the way, the whole deal. So I think that's a big deal. By the way, I just thought of it. You talked about Taylor Swift, Dan. What if it's just like the ultimate irony? What if we had the Air Jordan series?
Yeah.
Sue NASCAR while sponsoring the second series. Come on, man.
I liked your post on X on because right now they're running the unbannable brand or something from Jordan.
Yes, NASCAR. So yeah, Tyler Reddick ran the white Jordan paint scheme, but it had the black box like going through the middle of it, like it was censored. And that's true. I mean, Fox talked about it during the race. That harkens to when the NBA banned the first Air Jordans from being played on the court for whatever reason back in the late 1980s. And it said unbannable on the back of that car. Now, is that a coincidence, ladies and gentlemen, that NASCAR tried to ban 2311 from having a charter or having charters, and they're running the unbannable paint scheme in the first race of the year? All right, I'm all in. Air Jordan Series 2026, is it right? This is the last year of the Xfinity Series. So Air Jordan Series 2026. I'm in.
Yeah,
well,
put me down for $100 donation.
We're making the best of a bad situation, so to speak. It's not a bad situation, but it's not the most favorable one. But we're making light of it.
And if we want to really just make this spicy, it's the Air Jordan Series presented by Long John Silver's. Get Bob Jenkins involved. Yeah, come on, boy. Fried fish and J's, baby. Let's go. Okay.
I hate to say it, but that's marketing to the opposite of Gen Z.
Yeah.
Jordans?
No, Long John Silver.
Hey, well, no, we got to get some fried fish in Gen Z's mouth, man. THC.
Hey, we got to get some Culvers.
THC infused shrimp poppers, baby. Let's go.
I'm all for the Culver's Xfinity series, the Culver's series.
One thing that the Xfinity series has lacked ever since they took the Grand National name off is you don't have anything to call that series except for the sponsor. Because we got Cup, we got trucks, we've got and remember when NASCAR was courting Monster, they floated out the idea and saw how people reacted to it, which was change is terrible, don't ever change anything. But they floated out the idea of dropping the name Cup from the Cup series so people would be forced to say the sponsor's name, the Monster Energy series or the Walmart series or whatever it is, right? And with the Xfinity series, it's been called that since 2015, before it was Nationwide, before it was Busch. We have to go way back to when they still called it the Busch Grand National Series. A Grand National used to be the name, by the way, of the Cup Series. So maybe they need to reinstitute either a totally new name or a Grand National, because I don't know that we're going to get somebody in this series. I say I'm not involved, but you had a 10-year sponsor there, or 11 years after this year, 11-year sponsor. Xfinity. I don't know. It's going to be tough to lock someone down for that many years. Maybe we need the Air Jordan Grand National Series. I don't know, or something like that. Grand National seems a dated name, but yeah.
And one more tidbit too. They're going to be introducing the Xfinity fastest lap in the Xfinity. Actually, Let me share my screen again. But
Share, come on.
Let me just read from
Yeah.
starting this season. NASCAR will introduce the Xfinity fastest lap, which will award 1 point to the team and driver with the fastest single recorded lap each race across all 3 series of NASCAR's National Series.
Oh,
So now you can earn up to 61 points a race, or
Where
71
does-
if it's the 600.
so where does the fastest lap idea come from for getting a point for the fastest lap?
I don't know.
Formula One. Dan?
Can you say N1 is alive and well?
Touchdown. But I don't hate that idea. And they used to use, remember when they were doing the qualifying metrics during COVID, fastest lap was part of the metric for that. I don't dislike that. I just don't like that it makes it more complicated, but it's only 1 point as well. So you get the same number of points for getting the fastest lap in the race that you would get. It's a regular point, not a playoff point, right?
I think it's just a point.
Right.
think.
So you get the equivalent of finishing 10th in a stage, but
I
for
mean,
getting the fastest lap. But hey, that's why
another
not?
point you can get in a race.
Tyler Reddick won the regular season championship by 1 point, I believe, last year.
Could you imagine, like, well, I don't think it'll have a big playoff implication, but like in the playoffs, you just like, oh, well, he's going to get in the cut line because he had the fastest lap in today's race.
I mean, but think about it. If you have the car to go bolt on some stickers and shoom. So interesting. Change is inevitable, ladies and gentlemen. Well, cheers to Xfinity. Couple other quick headlines here. We need to wrap this thing up. We're closed in an hour. Team Penske announced that Tim Cindric, Austin's papa, Team Penske announced Tim Cindric is going to step back from everyday duties. I don't have his age in front of me. I don't think this is performance related, considering how well Penske's done in all of its sports. But he is going to still oversee the IndyCar program, which is where he was closest anyway. And he's going to be their team historian in a way, overseeing their archives. But Michael Nelson will run NASCAR. Jonathan DeGuede will run sports cars, and they will report directly to Roger Penske instead of reporting to Tim Cindric. So a little shakeup within the Penske ranks. I don't see anything more into that. Do you guys?
No.
Yeah, they're not underperforming. They've won the last 3 NASCAR championships. Won Indy 500s.
I think with the duties that Tim was trying to do, I think he was spread way thin, and I think that was a lot. The move at Penske was just an internal structure reorganization there of a tiny bit.
The cynic in me, the cynic about Cindric. No, the cynic in me wonders, does that make Austin Cindric just a little bit less secure? You know, because he's not, but no, we don't think so. Okay. Ford has unveiled its Mach-E Mustang electric vehicle stock car. They did a demonstration. Matt Weaver at Sports Night. I try to give him a shout out every show because he does such great work over there. He has a big article about that in Sports Night. David Reagan told me, because he helped develop the NASCAR EV, he worked on this one, it being with Ford, that it's really just a promotional thing. There isn't some grand plan to unveil this somewhere, but it does not look too dissimilar from the Mustangs that are on the racetrack right now. So a Mach-E, which I like those Mach-Es. I think they're kind of cool. You know, I think it's a slightly different Mustang, right? Because it's a crossover SUV platform. Devin
I don't
says
think Dan
no.
and I like the Mach-E Mustangs.
Yeah, I understand why not. I get it. I'm not trying to convince anybody, but nothing too much on the horizon there. But
is a Prius in your future?
If it's free, give me a Prius and we'll talk. Okay.
Yeah, you know what's funny about a Prius? I test drove a Prius like years ago, like part of like my driving school that I did, and that thing had sport mode in it. It was a hybrid.
Sure, the electric vehicles can accelerate way faster.
Devin drove the Mach-P, not the Prius. He drove the Mach-P.
Yeah.
I had to do a drug taste that involved a Mach-P once. Okay, so the
yeah, but it had estrogen in it, didn't it?
Unfortunately, it's obvious in my case. So, hey, I think maybe one of the longest, it has to be the longest serving track president in NASCAR is stepping down as well. Las Vegas Motor Speedway president Chris Powell is going to retire. He's in one, if not 2 halls of fame out there for his role with the racetrack. He's going to retire from Vegas. The track opened in 1998. He's been the head dog the whole time there, according to that. I did not know that he had been the president the whole time. And, of course, Vegas, fun racetrack. Go see it out there out west. Couple of other things. The Dash for Cash program. You talked about Xfinity. They've been sponsoring the Dash for Cash since they came on board, I think the whole time since 2015. That's where you have 4 Xfinity drivers, the top 4 finish in a race. If one of them wins the next race, they get a bonus. And then you go on from there. There's 4 different races. But that program is going to – they banned Cup drivers from being in those races. Well, now they're going to allow Cup drivers to be in. I'm sure that's driven by the fact that Cup drivers, who can only be in about 7 Xfinity races a year, they were limited on the races they could be in because they also can't be in the playoffs. They'll also be able to participate in the races that are part of the Craftsman Truck Series Triple Truck Challenge, which is similar to the Dash for Cash, where you get bonuses if you're one of those 3 truck drivers and you win a race. All right. Another one, too, here on the Xfinity side, Ryan Truex, who, despite winning 2 races last year for Gibbs, it had no ride lined up with Gibbs' organization. It had all the pay-to-play drivers signed up. They even have Chase Briscoe's going to run a Lance Cracker's car at Charlotte and stuff. They just didn't have room for Ryan Truex. We already talked about on here. He's going to be their reserve driver for Gibbs this year. He's going to continue running in their simulator and doing a lot of the sim work for the Cup and Xfinity programs. He is going to get to run a Daytona for Sam Hunt Racing in the number 24, assuming he makes the show. Anyway, the 26 Sam Hunt car is driven full-time this year by Dean Thompson. So, yes, Dean Thompson has a full-time Xfinity ride. Ryan Truex won 2 races last year and does not. That says everything you need to know about a lot of things. All right. Also, in the Truck Series, Young's Motorsports, they haven't announced their Xfinity plans that I can see, but in the Truck Series, they're going to run on a part-time basis both Nathan Bird, who's run just a few select races over the last few years, and Phil's boy, Stephen Parsons, who will split some time in the Young's trucks. And then here we go, fellas. This one's for me. The pace car driver for the And Better Health 400 is going to be none other than Antoine Patton, a.k.a. Big Boy from Outcast. He's going to be down there, and I don't see any way I'm going to be able to get from the top of the suites to a situation where I'm going to get to meet Big Boy during the race weekend. I met him once before. I've got a picture with him at one of his shows several years ago. But, Dan, I know you're a huge Outcast fan, especially the Speaker Box Love Below album from 2003. How excited are you that Big Boy is going to be driving the pace car, Dan?
I can't contain myself.
Hold back.
I can't contain myself.
I'm
just ecstatic. Can't you tell?
Dan will walk into the media center with a Outcast T-shirt on, ready for like a paper with a get.
Hey, I'm the original Outcast, so he ain't got nothing on me.
Truth. Oh, anyway, that's that. But big news there at AMS. AMS finds ways to pull them out. You remember last year, Doug Rice got to do the command to start the engines there, beginning his retirement season. By the way, if you're wondering, Doug Rice still hosting Fast Talks. Check that out on GoPRN.com and in the podcatchers. He just, even now being retired, it's like he's got that extra wind in his sails, right? Because that's like the thing he does every week. And I believe he was also the PA announcer at Bowman-Gray Stadium this past week.
He's got that swagger going on now.
Doug Rice swag is the best swag. My man. All right, well, with that, I am through the headlines, through the big issues there. Devin, you got anything? Got any final thoughts?
Super Bowl this weekend, then Daytona 500. Let's go. I got the Super Bowl banners behind me.
Keep it with the hip-hop theme. I predict Kendrick Lamar to win the Super Bowl. So there we go. Put me down for Kendrick +7. All right. Dan, what about you? Final thoughts?
I'm getting ready to kick off the 40-year celebration. This will be the 40th year, and this will be the first thing I'll start it off with. And we've got a bush pole here. So we're starting off the 40th year.
For the 1985 Daytona 500.
1985, that's right. 40-year celebration.
That's big.
It's going to last all year long.
Well, we're going to have a special episode surrounding that Winston Million, especially there, which I think was the touchstone of that season. And Dan, you got so much cool stuff in the garage there. We'll have to, we're hoping to get these on video more often. Maybe.
I wonder if my Pisces would still get me into Daytona.
You wonder if your
1985 Pisces would still get me into Daytona.
It's worth a shot, man.
Either that or I've got a hard card story I'll tell you sometime.
I like it. Hey, I'll give you a final thought here. How about during the race, and I posted on X about this too, we had a Corvette pace car, but Chevy is still running the Camaro bodies, although they're not branded as Camaros in the Cup Series. What my question is, how have we not figured out when you knew the Camaro was being phased out like all of 2024? How did we not figure out a new Chevy scenario for the Cup Series? All right. I mean, and the answer is because the Corvette doesn't look anything like a Cup car, and Chevy doesn't make anything that looks like one of the Cup cars, right? It's just weird to me
I,
that
I bet Rick Hendrick's got something.
I don't know, but I just think that's really I just don't understand if this is supposed to be win on Sunday, sell on Monday, which I know is a little bit antiquated. Chevy is out there running with this androgynous no-name car.
I
If
saw
that's
it.
probably not the right word. But
I saw online. I don't have the picture. I'd have to go look for it, but I saw a render of what in the current generation car, a Corvette Cup car would look like, and it actually didn't look that bad. I'll have to send it to you guys.
Why are they a year behind? I don't understand.
Can you say GTP?
Yeah.
Why are they a year behind? I don't get that. It flummoxes me, all right? Just like it flummoxed me why we didn't have crowd noise and more excitement in the TV broadcast. I just don't get that. That seems like an obvious thing that just ran under the door, so to speak. But I know with these spec bodies and trying to make the cars all the same, if you roll out with something radically different, that could be a difficulty. But nonetheless, look, next week, we're going to ramp up to the 2025 season for real and preview the Daytona 500. When we record this show next week, we still will not have had any cars on the track at Daytona. So we're predicting the 500 winner and all that kind of stuff. We'll lay out when and where to see and listen to and watch all that unfolds at Daytona, as well as give some of our big predictions because we have so much evidence to go off of for the 2025 season. So be sure to check out. And next week will be our 300th episode of 5 to Go. So pop open the orange juice bottle or the THC infused champagne or whatever. Devin's
What does Gen Z do?
How did Gen Z celebrate a 300th episode?
Yeah,
I have no idea.
They go
I have no idea.
TLDL, too long, didn't listen.
Oh.
Something like that. Yeah. I don't know. But
because if you don't get rowdy, if you don't drink a lot and get rowdy at the racetrack, you're going to have to generate some noise somewhere.
Microdosing. We're back to microdosing once again, just like we started today. All right. So there you go. Well, we'll celebrate next week and, of course, be ready for whatever unfolds in the Daytona 500. So thank you all for listening. Be sure to jump on our Facebook page where we post the new episodes as well. And if you enjoy this, put it in your racing group chat. Send it to your friends and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications as well. We want to get more word out about this. We do not have some deep marketing budget or anything like that. We haven't interrupted this with commercials one time, have we? Unless some algorithm did on your podcatcher. So come on. Spread the word there so eventually we can afford to be good enough to have commercials. There you go. That's what we need.
Yeah, we haven't interrupted you with commercials yet.
Yeah, we're working on that. So I've got my Viagra application put in. We'll see if they come back with any sponsorship there. Anyway, for Devin and Dan, I'm Doug. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you all enjoyed the Clash. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll gear up for Daytona next week on episode number 300. Peace out and have a great week.